The conference room was too bright, too cold, and far too quiet. Every executive seat was filled, yet no one dared to breathe loudly. At the head of the table stood her husband, the CEO, tall, polished, powerful. Beside him stood another woman, head lowered, eyes rimmed red, hands clenched as if she were holding back tears. And in front of them all stood her. "Apologize," he said. No hesitation, no explanation, just a command. She looked at him, waiting, foolishly, for some sign of doubt, some flicker of recognition that she was his wife. But his gaze slid past her, settling instead on the woman beside him. "You scared her," he continued, voice sharp enough to cut. "You misunderstood her role. This behavior is unacceptable." A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. Everyone knew who she was, not just the CEO wife, but the woman who had quietly been present in every major project, every late-night revision, every miracle turnaround the company had survived. Yet none of that mattered now. The girlfriend sniffed softly, playing her part perfectly. "It's okay," she whispered. "I don't want to cause trouble between you two." Trouble, the word burned. She had spent 3 years swallowing loneliness, convincing herself that marriage didn't need affection as long as it had loyalty. She had accepted being invisible in public, nameless in the company, reduced to someone waiting at home. And now she was being asked to kneel emotionally before a stranger. "Say it," her husband pressed, impatience creeping into his tone. Her fingers curled at her sides, the room blurred not with tears, but with disbelief. This wasn't a private argument. This was a public execution. Slowly, she bowed her head. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was steady. That surprised even her. "I'm sorry if my actions caused misunderstanding. It wasn't my intention." A pause followed. The apology was accepted without grace. The meeting resumed as if nothing significant had happened, as if a marriage hadn't just cracked open in front of witnesses. No one looked at her. When the meeting ended, she walked out alone. Her heels echoed down the hallway, each step louder than the last. She didn't stop until she reached the stairwell, where the walls were bare and the air smelled faintly of dust. Only then did she allow herself to lean against the railing. Her phone vibrated, a message from her husband. "Go home, we'll talk later, later, always later." She stared at the screen, then locked it without replying. That night, the penthouse felt emptier than ever. His coat was gone, his side of the bed untouched. The silence wasn't new, but tonight it was final. She stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. Somewhere below, people were living ordinary lives, filled with arguments, laughter, warmth. She wondered when her own life had become so cold. Then she turned around. On her desk sat a stack of files, ones she had reviewed, corrected, and perfected. Reports no one knew she had written, strategies no one credited her for. Her name wasn't on them, but her mind was. For the first time since the apology, something shifted. If he believed she was disposable, if he thought humiliating her would keep her obedient, then he had made a fatal mistake. She opened her laptop, and the woman who had just apologized so quietly began planning how to never bow her head again. The penthouse remained silent for days. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching nothing that reminded her of him. The flowers he once sent for appearances had long since wilted. The framed wedding photo on the shelf felt like a stranger's memory, smiling at a future that had never arrived. At night, she lay awake, listening to the city breathe below her. She didn't cry, not because she wasn't hurt, but because the pain had settled too deep for tears. It lived in the quiet moments, in the empty space beside her, in the way she still reached for her phone before remembering there was no one to call. She thought back to the beginning. He hadn't always been cruel, just distant, ambitious. He married her when his company was small, when success was still uncertain. She had believed in him when investors didn't, worked beside him when assistants quit, and stayed silent when his name alone took the credit. She told herself love was patience. Now she understood it had been sacrifice one-sided and endless. On the fourth night, she opened the locked drawer in her study. Inside were copies of contracts, internal audits, and email threads she had saved over the years, not out of suspicion but habit. She had always been careful, too careful perhaps for a woman who trusted her husband. As she reviewed them now, patterns emerged. Numbers adjusted without explanation, access logs from the finance department, and the girlfriend's name, appearing again and again, always attached to sensitive information. Her chest tightened. The woman hadn't just been a distraction, she had been a risk. The next morning, she returned to the company. No announcement followed her arrival, no acknowledgement, but she felt eyes on her as she passed through the lobby, her posture straight, expression calm. She went directly to her office, small, windowless, officially labeled consultant. Unofficially, the room where impossible deadlines had been solved. A message awaited her, board meeting request, private. She read it twice. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was different from before. No accusations, no raised voices, just measured attention. "We've been reviewing past performance," the chairman said. Specifically during the restructuring phase 2 years ago. Her heart pounded, but her face remained still. "You led those strategies," another director continued, under a different designation. She nodded once. Yes, there was a pause, not awkward, respectful. "We also uncovered irregularities," the chairman added. "Related to an internal leak." She didn't need to ask who. When she left the room, her hands trembled for the first time. She locked herself in her office and allowed one breath to break, not sobs, just air escaping a chest that had been held tight for too long. She hadn't planned revenge, she had planned survival, and now the truth was doing the work for her. That evening her husband finally came home. "You went to the company," he said flatly. "Yes, you should stay out of internal matters." She met his gaze, unafraid. "I never was." Something flickered across his face, uncertainty, perhaps. She turned away before he could speak again. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back wasn't broken. She was awake. The breakdown had already happened. In silence, unseen, unacknowledged. What followed would not be quiet at all. The announcement came on a Monday morning. She was reviewing reports when her inbox chimed. Once, then again, then relentlessly. Messages flooded in from departments she hadn't officially worked with in years. Some were cautious. Others openly shocked. "Congratulations, is it true? Did you know beforehand?" Her fingers paused above the keyboard. Then the internal memo appeared. Board resolution. Appointment of executive director, effective immediately. Her name stood alone beneath the title. For a moment, the office around her seemed unreal. The humming lights, the distant phones, the steady rhythm of a company that had no idea how close it had come to collapsing once, and who had quietly held it together. She closed her eyes, not relief, not joy, validation. The board meeting that followed was brief but decisive. "We underestimated you," the chairman said, meeting her gaze without avoidance. "That will not happen again." They outlined her authority, her scope, her access. Full transparency, full control over operations that had once required approval through her husband. Her husband, she did not think of him until the doors opened. He entered late, his confident stride faltering as he saw her seated at the table. Not beside him, not behind him, across from him. "What is this?" he demanded, trying to recover his composure. The chairman spoke calmly. "This is the board's decision. You promoted her without consulting me." The room fell silent. She watched something fracture in his expression, not anger, but disbelief. For the first time, he was not the center of the room. "For years," she said softly, breaking her silence, "you didn't consult me either." Her voice wasn't sharp. That made it worse. The girlfriend didn't last the week. Security escorted her out after the audit had concluded. Confidential files had been leaked, payments traced, emails recovered, the image of innocence dissolved under scrutiny. Her husband argued, defended, denied. No one listened. By Friday, the company issued a statement distancing itself from unauthorized personnel. By Monday, the woman's desk was gone. So was his certainty. That evening, he confronted her in the penthouse. "You planned this," he accused. She loosened her coat, unhurried. "I prepared for reality. You humiliated me." She looked at him, then really looked. "You taught me how," she replied. Silence followed. He had always believed power was loud. She now understood it was quiet, patient, and devastatingly fair. Her new office overlooked the city. Sunlight poured through glass walls as she stood alone, absorbing the space. This was where decisions were made, where voices carried weight. Her assistant knocked gently. "Your schedule is ready." She nodded, settling behind the desk. Outside, the company moved forward. Inside, she allowed herself one small smile. This wasn't the end. It was leverage, and while everyone believed the promotion was her victory, they didn't know the truth that she was still holding one final card. The most important one, the one that would set her free. The divorce papers were signed on a quiet afternoon. No shouting, no accusations. Just two signatures placed carefully on white pages that marked the end of something long hollow. He sat across from her, immaculate as ever, yet diminished in ways a tailored suit could not hide. "You're really doing this?" he said. Yes, one word, no apology, no hesitation. The marriage had ended long before the ink touched paper. She moved out that evening, not in anger, not in tears, but with intention. She left behind the penthouse, the memories, and the illusion that love could survive neglect. Her new apartment was smaller, brighter, and entirely hers. The following week, she executed the final part of her plan. She submitted her resignation. The board was stunned. "You're walking away now?" the chairman asked. After everything, she smiled gently. "I never wanted power here. I wanted recognition." And she had it. Her promotion had triggered a review of company practices, including the policy that allowed spouses to remain undisclosed partners. The investigation widened. Her husband's leadership came under scrutiny, not for scandal, but for dependence. They saw what he hadn't. His downfall wasn't dramatic. It was worse. Stock confidence dipped. Investors questioned. His authority eroded quietly, one meeting at a time. Without her support, his weaknesses showed. Decisions stalled. Confidence cracked. He called her once. "I didn't know," he said. She didn't ask what he meant. "I know," she replied. And that was enough. Months later, she stood in a different building. New company, new title. Her reputation preceded her, not as someone's wife, but as someone formidable. She had been recruited quietly, deliberately, with terms she negotiated herself. The secret plan had never been revenge. It had been escape. Revenge was simply the truth arriving on time. On her first day, she paused at the lobby window, watching the city move below. The same city that once felt unreachable now felt full of possibility. She thought back to the apology, to the room, to the humiliation, to the moment she bowed her head. That woman had survived. This one had risen. She never saw the girlfriend again. She heard, occasionally, about her ex-husband, how he spoke less in meetings, how his confidence dimmed, how the company no longer revolved around him. She felt no triumph in it. Only peace, sweet, steady, earned peace. That night, she unpacked the last box in her new home. At the bottom lay a single file folder, the first strategy she had ever written for him. She closed it gently. Some stories were meant to end, others were meant to teach. As she turned off the light, she smiled, not for what she had lost, but for what she had reclaimed. Herself, and that was the sweetest revenge of all.